All right, good afternoon, everyone. First, since this is the last author presentation of today, I wanted to take a moment and thank you on behalf of all of us at the Nantucket Book Festival for not only showing up this weekend, but for supporting us all throughout the year. After a 2-year absence, it has been incredibly gratifying to see your faces and your smiles while we enjoy these wonderful authors. Which leads me to our next presenter. Mitch Albom is an internationally renowned and best-selling author, journalist, screenwriter, playwright, radio and television broadcaster, and musician. I've run out of breath. His books have collectively sold more than 40 million copies worldwide, and 4 of his bestsellers have been made into successful television movies. What you may not know is that Mitch and his wife have also founded 9 charities in the Detroit area, including the Have Faith Haiti mission, dedicated to the safety, education, health, and spiritual development of Haiti's impoverished children and orphans. Those of you attending the Rock Bottom Remainders concert tonight will get to see yet another side of Mitch, which hopefully will include an appearance by Elvis Presley. Interviewing Mitch is the festival's very dear friend and sponsor from WCAI, Mindy Todd. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mitch Albom.
So Mitch, you wear a lot of hats, right? But that musician part of you, that's when you first got out of college, that was paying the bills.
Well, not very well, but that was my intention. I did intend to be a musician. I never wrote a word, and so I know there are a lot of young people that come to literary festivals, and they say, I sometimes meet 17-year-olds who go, well, it's too late for me. I haven't written a novel yet. I didn't write anything until I was maybe 23 years old. I wanted to be, I wanted to be Billy Joel, and there already was a Billy Joel. That was the problem, and I wasn't close in talent. But that was my goal.
Maddie mentioned maybe we'll see Elvis, and maybe you want to tell us the story. This is what a little island that you ran out of money touring Europe, and you had to get a job.
So it's a long story that's very funny, and one day I'll write it in a book. But the condensed version is, before I was going to start my music career in New York, I graduated college. I decided to take a summer over in Europe. Traveled around Europe with a friend of mine. At the end of the trip, he was going to go home. I was going to go over to Israel to visit my brother and sister who were there. And he ran out of money. So I gave him all my money because I had a Eurail pass or whatever it was. And I figured, well, I'll just go to Athens and I'll pick up a bunch, I'll get money sent to me and then I'll be able to fly over. Turns out that the ferry that you need to go from Italy to Greece does not take the Eurail pass. And so I ended up on a 3-day journey via train from Brindisi, Italy, up through what was then Yugoslavia, all the way down into Athens, because it was the only way to get there. I had not a dime to my name. I had to beg and ask for food from people. And I think, one of the things that years later when I got involved with homeless people, I never forgot what it was like to have to ask people for food. And I got to Greece, and I didn't have any money. I trudged across town. It was like 100 degrees to this bank, and I got to the bank at 5 after 3, and it had closed. And all this is relevant only to the fact that if I had gotten there earlier, I would have taken a plane out and never would have stayed. But because I missed it, I ended up begging my way into a youth hostel and had to spend the weekend. While I was there over the weekend, I'm on a bed in the youth hostel. I gave them my camera as collateral because I had no money. And they were holding my camera, and someone read something about an ad for a piano player wanted on Luxury Island, Resort Island. I ended up going for this interview just as a lark, because I had nothing to do. I was the only person who interviewed for it. They wrote me a ticket and gave it to me and flew me to Crete that afternoon. And I showed up in Crete with no idea what Crete was or anything, I didn't speak a word of Greek. I had a piece of paper. The cab driver takes a piece of paper. He starts driving around the island, and he keeps looking over at me going, America good, like that. And I said, well, I gotta go. And then all of a sudden, he veers off the road and drives into the woods. And I'm thinking like, okay, I got the first serial killer cab driver in Greece. And we go into the woods, and there's this little light in the house, and he stops the car, and there's all these chickens around and everything. I'm thinking I'm going to get axe murdered. And he goes, come. And he takes me, and it's just his house. And he wants me to have dinner with him and his wife. And so I kept pointing my watch. I said, I have to go. He said, okay. And his wife takes a chicken and a watermelon and a big thing of feta cheese and gets in the car with us, and she's feeding me over the back seat. This is all in one afternoon or evening. And then we get to the hotel. I walk in with chicken grease all over me. And the guy says to me, are you the piano player? I said, yeah. He says, there's a piano. Start playing. So I sat down. I started playing. I played for an hour. I played Misty like 100 times because I didn't have any music with me. And then when we were done, he took me down to the taverna, and there was a band, a Greek like oompa band, like that kind of music. And he's getting really soused because it's his birthday apparently, and people keep buying him drinks. And so he says to me, do you sing? And I said, well, yeah, I can sing. Sing with the band. I said, no, and I didn't mean it that way. Sing with the band if you want the job. I said, okay. So I had to go up there, and we didn't speak any English or everything, and he told me he was to sing. So the guy says to me, Elvis Presley? So I said, okay. He goes, blue suede shoes? I said, okay, blue suede shoes. So if you know that song, you know it starts cold. There's no music, and the lights were all off. And so I hear them count it off. And, remember, this is a little taverna, nice little resort. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And the lights come up, and I go, 1 for the money, 2 for, like that. And everyone's like, and I had this notion right there, like, you will never be here again. You're going home tomorrow. You can do anything you want. And so for the next 3 minutes, I became Elvis Presley. This is the first time I ever really sang an Elvis song, but I was like doing around in the whole thing. And I just went nuts. I went to the tables and everything. I'm just thinking, this is going to be such a great story. And I finished, and I got this standing ovation from this crowd. I think they were in shock. And I went back to the table with the guy, and he said, that's it. I'm going to hire you to be my singer and my piano player. And I'm saying, I'm going home tomorrow. And he said, and I'm going to give you $350 cash in your own bungalow right on the ocean. And I said, I can do that. Yeah, I can. And so I flew back to Athens the next morning. I came back that afternoon. And from then on, for the next 6, 7 months, I was Elvis Presley of the island. This was in Crete, in a little village, what is now no longer a little village, but it's a place called Agios Nikolaos, which back then was a little fishing village. And it was such a small place, and I was the only one singing anything in English, that I could go into this town and just stand on a corner if I didn't want to walk back over the mountains, and a car would drive by, Elvis, get in, come on, we go. And so I lived this life, it was a crazy life for 6 or 7 months. And of course, like an idiot, instead of staying there the rest of my life, which is what I should have done, I quit because I had to get back to New York to start my life as a real musician. And when I got to New York, every musician I met said, oh, if I could just get to a place like Greece, and, I'd never leave it, And so,
it's so funny.
I had what everybody dreamt about. So that's, if you see me do the Elvis stuff tonight, it began 40 years ago.
Your early writing focused on sports, but of course it was Tuesdays with Morrie that really, and I'm wondering if you believe in coincidence, or, you're just channel surfing, and here you see your professor, Morrie Schwartz, being interviewed by Ted Koppel. Was that divine intervention? What was that?
Yeah, no, I don't really believe in coincidence. I think it's more fate than that, and I think most everything significant that's happened in my life has come as a result of an accident or something that I didn't see coming. That story I just told you, and certainly Morrie, which was as a result of flipping the remote controls. Morrie and I had been extremely close in college. I took every class he offered. I walked around campus with him. I ate lunches with him. I majored in sociology because of him, not because I was really the slightest bit interested in sociology, but I had all those credits. I would have been ashamed to waste them. I really majored in Morrie, to be honest. And then I went off into the world and became very ambitious, very self-oriented, and I didn't think about anything in the past. And I hadn't talked to him for 16 years until I happened to see him on the Nightline program. Now, what a lot of people don't know, everybody knows that kind of backstory, but what they don't know, because for some reason I left it out of the book, I thought I had put it in, but I made a phone call to him. That was really going to be it. It was just going to be a phone call. And I remember to this day, I practiced my line. And when I was in college, I used to call Morrie Coach. It was like a sports affectation. Hi, Coach, how you doing? Good. But I had long since forgotten that. And I dialed his number, was still listed. A nurse answered. She handed him the phone, and I said, "Hello, Professor Schwartz. My name is Mitch Albom. I was a student of yours in the 70s. I don't know if you remember me." And the first thing he said to me after 16 years was, "How come you didn't call me Coach?" And, of course, needless to say, by the end of the conversation, I was coming to visit him because guilt is a very powerful motivator. And that's what led to the visits, and one turned to another, until every Tuesday. So I don't know if you call that kismet, karma, fate, coincidence, but it's a pattern that's repeated itself in my life.
That was like that had a big impact in your life, big turning point in your life. And the book really came out of a desire to help him, right, with his medical bills. I mean, that was your...
It's the only reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody thinks that like I planned that out, and I was a sports writer. I didn't know anything about writing a book like that. And I think what was significant, Mindy, is that was really the first thing, if I'm being honest, at age 37, it was the first thing that I really did for somebody else, because it wasn't going to help me or my career or anything. In fact, I kept thinking this is going to mess up my sports writing career. People are going to think I'm soft or something like that. And I just wrote it because he told me how in debt he was for his medical bills and that he was going to die twice. He said, "I'm going to die twice." I said, "What do you mean?" "I'm going to die when I die, and then somewhere in the afterlife, when I realize my wife's going to have to sell the house and my kids and all that because they have to pay off all these bills, I'm going to die again." So I went around to New York with this idea of an old man talking to a young man about what's important in life when he dies. And I went to virtually every publisher there was, and almost every one of them said, "No, not interested, boring, depressing, you're a sports writer." I had one, I won't say the publishing house because somebody might have relatives there, but they said to me, they stopped me before I even finished and said, "We're not going to waste your time. You don't even know what a memoir is. Come back maybe in 20 years when you have a better idea." So when I read a number of years back that Tuesdays with Morrie had become the best-selling memoir of all time, I thought about, well, it wasn't so much take that. He's in the food services industry now, so I would. But it wasn't so much take that, but it was like, wow, that's why you have to keep going. And if any of you have been told no with some of your work or whatever, I'm the ultimate told no. I mean, everybody walked away from Tuesdays with Morrie. One publisher, and only a few weeks before Morrie died. Wow. And I went to him, I said, "Listen, and I hadn't told him that we were going to do it because I was afraid, what if I don't get anybody? Then I'm going to disappoint him." So I went to him, I said, "Hey, this thesis?" He thought we were writing a thesis. He made me tape, we taped all our recordings, and he said, "You'll write a thesis." And I didn't have the heart to say to him, I wasn't enrolled in school anywhere. I don't really know how you do that if you're not actually a student. But I said, "Hey, this thesis that we're doing?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I got a publisher wants to publish it." He said, "Really? Who?" I said, "Doubleday." He said, "Ooh, I heard of them." I said, "Yeah, well, not only that, but they're going to give us some money." I had told them the figure because I knew how much he needed. And that was all we got, and that was all I wanted. And I said, "And you take all this money and pay your medical bills. Don't die twice." And I always say that for me, that was the end of Tuesdays with Morrie, because I had finally kind of learned really what he was trying to teach me, and that is that life is for other people and not for yourself. But then, of course, I had to write the book because we did take the money, So I really didn't know what I was doing, and I was so green, Mindy, to be honest. The contract was for a 320-page book. Well, I typed it up, and it was about 320 pages typed, but I was like, had all that white space in between. So when I sent it into them, and about a week or two later, they paginated, they said, "We got a problem." They called me up, and I said, "What's the problem?" They said, "This is like 175 pages. I said, "Well, that's all I got, Like, I wanted to write it simply, and I said, "I don't have any more to say." And to their credit, they said, "Don't worry about it, we'll just make it a small book." And so if you've ever noticed, like, all my books are this size, well, that's because Tuesdays with Morrie, if they made it a regular size book, would have looked like a comic book. Yeah. And so they made it this size, and then after Two Sisters with Morrie became successful, now all my books are like Hobbit-sized, so like me, you know.
I want to take a little detour from the writing for a second and talk about the orphanage. As Maddie mentioned, 9 charities in Detroit, the orphanage in Haiti. How did you come to run an orphanage?
Well, it's like I told you before. Everything in my life that's significant has happened by accident. And I do a radio program in Detroit. And right after the 2010 earthquake, a pastor came to me who said he had an orphanage there and he couldn't get in touch with it. And he thought that all the kids were dead. And could I help him? And there was something about the idea of children being buried under rubble that I could not sit with. And so I did more than try to help him. I arranged a flight down, and I went with him. And we landed in Haiti. The senator from Michigan at the time, Carl Levin, was the head of the Armed Services Committee, which oversaw the flights that came in and out of Haiti. So he gave us special dispensation to fly. We had a 10-minute window to land in Haiti. And if we didn't make that 10-minute window, we had to go back. So we were circling around, and we came down. So this was only 2 weeks after the earthquake, and it was, I'll never see anything like that. I hope to never see anything like that again. It was just hell on earth, and people walking around missing limbs, everybody was covered in white dust, rubble everywhere. You see people on big piles of rubble pulling rocks out, trying to find bodies and people. Now, the orphanage had not been destroyed. A place across the street had been destroyed. But it was semi-intact, but it was overrun with people. And I just took to the kids there. I mean, there were about 250 people that didn't belong there, but in between were all these kids. And I started to bring people back from Detroit. And Detroit is, I'm very, very proud of my town. Detroit is a place where we have very little, and there are a lot of people who are very poor, but they give disproportionately. And I put the word out saying, I need people who can build, who can do plumbing, who can do contract, because they don't have toilets, they don't have showers, they don't have a kitchen, they don't have anything. At the time, the kids were using, their bathroom was just holes in the ground out in the field, and at night they would take rocks with them if they had to go to the bathroom, and they would bang the rocks on other rocks to chase the rats away before they would pull their pants down because they didn't want to get bit in the rear end by a rat. I mean, you don't ever think about these things. And then they would use the rocks as toilet paper because there was no toilet paper. So I got 25 guys to come down with me 9 times to Haiti, and we built the first toilets, the first showers, the first kitchen. We built a school. But while we were doing this pastor, who was in his 80s, I kept noticing the kids were like, they would watch us, they would help us, but they would eat like 1 cup of rice a day. And I said, I don't get it. We're putting all this time and effort in. What are you doing? And he said, well, to be honest, I don't have any money to run this place, and I haven't for years, and I'm 84 years old. And so in one of those moments, like you're asking me about, I said, well, you know, I run a bunch of charities in Detroit. I could probably run this if you want me to. And he goes, thank you, Jesus. Here you are. And that was the last we saw of him, basically. And I have been running that orphanage ever since.
And going once a month, you go
Oh, I go
there.
every month.
Yeah.
We were just talking before that I was wondering when I was going to hit 150 trips to Haiti, and it'll be 2 months from now will be my 150th time to Haiti. My wife and I go, Janine, who's right here, we go every month, and we have, clap for Janine. We now have, we have 55 kids that are there, and 40 staff, and our kids are, I'm so proud of them. I mean, they come from all over the country of Haiti. Many have been abandoned. Many don't have any parents at all. A number of them don't have, and they come to us without names, without birth certificates. We don't even know. Somebody drops them off. We say, who is it? We don't know. Do you have any paperwork? No. And we've had to invent more than one name and birth certificate. But they are the most grateful, joyous, you know, faithful.
Inspirational.
Well, that's to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, inside them, they just have such joy waiting and loving kids. And because we have no internet and we have no cell phones and we have no television and we have no outside interference, Janine and I get the chance to see what childhood really looks like when it's not interfered with from the outside. And I can tell you, it's an amazing, loving, unembarrassed thing We have 11-year-old boys who, if a guy comes down and visit, they'll take his arm and put it around them as they walk because nobody told them that's not cool. You're not supposed to do that. We have no cool. We don't know what cool is. We have like 55 nerds. They love to read. They just read books all the time over and over again. They all want to be writers and they all want to live in Detroit. This is like, that's what they know, Yeah. That's what they think being grown up is. Yeah. And we have college scholarships lined up for every one of them. And we already have 8 now that are in college, and our oldest one just graduated summa cum laude, never got less than a 4.0. We got a few 4.2s or whatever, and he's going to medical school. So it's pretty incredible what they can do. Yeah. Only 1% of Haitians ever go to college, and less than 0.3% ever leave to go to college. And our kids come from places where some were living in holes in the ground in the dirt, or abandoned at medical clinics or things like that. One of our kids was left to die under a tree until somebody found him, took him to the police, and the police said, "What'd you pick him up for? Now we have to do paperwork." That's how he began. And yet they end up in the 99.7 percentile. Yeah. So I'll be there the rest of my life. I know Janine will, and we hope, obviously, it'll go on after we're gone. Yeah. And those kids have been a massive inspiration to us.
Can you tell us about Chica? And I know you want to read a little bit from the book, right?
So Chica was born 3 days before the earthquake. She survived it when the house that she was in with her mother collapsed. But because many structures in Haiti just have a tin roof that's sitting on top, isn't attached, the roof fell backwards and the walls collapsed and they were left like naked to the sky, So at 3 days old, she survived an earthquake. And then 2 years later, her mother died, and giving birth to a baby brother who there was no reason for her to die except there was no doctors around and something went wrong, and she died in the same bed where the baby was born. So Chica was taken away and was brought to us. She lived with us. She was the bossiest, loudest, pushiest kid that we had. She told all the other kids where they could go to the bathroom, who could play with the ball, whatever. She had a voice like Ethel Merman in like size 1 shoes. You could hear her across the park, across the yard. And then at age 5, she developed a brain tumor. We found this out because her face was drooping, and the doctors there gave her eye drops. I still don't know how anybody could do that, but I said, it's not eye drops, it's neurological. Find an MRI, and there's only one MRI machine in the whole country. So when we finally got her there, they gave us a report. They said, it's 2 sentences. The child has a mass on her brain in the Pons area, and there's no one in Haiti who can help her. That was the message. So we brought her to America thinking, well, American doctors, they'll take care of it. We know some people at Michigan. And basically, she never went home again. It turned out she had something called DIPG, which is diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. It's a 4-letter word for death. Kids who get it never survive. It only hits about 300 kids a year. Usually they're dead within 4 or 5 months. And that's what they told us would happen with Chica. And they told us, take her back and let her just die quietly in Haiti. At least she'll be at home. And Janine and I looked at one another. We said, you don't know this kid. She'll fight. And if she'll fight, we're going to fight with her. So you better tell us where the experimental treatments are, because that's where we're going. And Chica lived not 4 months, not 8 months or 12 or 16 or 20, but 2 years, which is almost a record with that disease. Unfortunately, she succumbed to it when she was 7 years old, but she changed our lives immeasurably. And because we had never had children of our own, although we have 55 of them, it really was a remarkable journey.
And did you want to read something from the book?
Yeah, I wanted to pick a page because whenever you adopt a kid in any fashion, I think you go through that thing about like, I'm not the real parent. What does it mean to be the real parent? In Chica's case, her father was actually alive. He had nothing to do with her and didn't want to have anything to do with her, and he was an alcoholic and wasn't with the mother at the time, but he was alive. And so when it came time to, take Chica, I felt it was my duty to tell him that we were going to take her to America and try to get her operated on. So we had to find him, and then he didn't care. And then when it looked like she wasn't going to make it, we went back and I saw him another time and to tell him that, which again, he didn't care. So I wrote this after I came back from visiting him. And this is what I wrote about, fatherhood and adopting. I wonder, Chica, if anyone has blind claim over a child, save for God. I've witnessed the purest connection between an adoptive mother and her children, and I've witnessed helpless infants shunned by those who birthed them. The opposite also happens. After a while, you make peace with the truth. Love determines our bonds. It always comes down to that. The day your father returned home to Tabar, you ran a high fever and you vomited again. And that night, while he slept in his cinder-block house, you cried yourself to sleep at the mission. The next day, you seemed so weak that when the time came to leave, you didn't even say goodbye to the kids. You just took my hand and led me to the car. At the Port-au-Prince airport, you complained about walking, so I carried you through the lines, one arm tucked beneath you, one arm wheeling my roller bag. When we boarded the plane, I put a pillow on the armrest. Go to sleep, sweetheart, I said softly. You lay your head down. After a few seconds, you mumbled, Mr. Mitch. Yes, Chica. What will you do while I sleep? I'll read, I said, and I'll think about how much I love you. You nodded, your eyes glazed. That's what I'll do too, you said. At that moment, I didn't care about who belonged to whom. I was yours, even if you were not mine. And as I stroked your forehead, which was hot to the touch, I knew I always would be. And that's how I feel about her.
People ask you a lot why you write about death, and I love you. You said, I don't write about death, I write about life. Death just gets your attention.
It's true. I mean, if I say to you, we should go right now to Hawaii, and you say, I can't, I gotta work. And then I say to you, you're gonna be dead next week, we should go right now to Hawaii. You're right, let's go to Hawaii, everything changes. And, I do believe that. I mean, to me, people who write about serial killers and there's a murder every couple of pages, those are books about death. In my books, there's usually one death. It usually is like a half a page long, and everything else is about life, like the 5 people you meet in heaven. He dies at the very beginning of the book, and everything else is about what his life was about. But the kinds of things that interest me, you don't really want to think about unless you think about it in the face of mortality. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why, people say, oh, you always have death in your books. But
yeah. Let's talk about your newest book, The Stranger in the Lifeboat. Inspired by sort of the times, I'm thinking pandemic, but a lot of people are looking for help, right? And
yeah.
That's sort of what inspired this story?
Yeah, I saw after the pandemic and in the aftermath of Chica dying, because this is the book that followed Finding Chica, we often ask for help, or we often, if you believe in God or if you believe in the universe or something, we only approach it when we're in dire straits, when we're angry or, whatever. And when Chica died, I was angry, and I could not understand, as someone who does believe in God, I could not understand how there could be a benevolent God who can't be benevolent to a 7-year-old, especially one who had suffered so much as her. And I kind of wrote Finding Chica in pain. I needed to release that. But I wrote The Stranger in the Lifeboat kind of in healing, because I began to think about, well, what if there's more to the story than you think? What if there's more to it than your anger? What if when you call out for help, you actually have already been helped? Because let's face it, in life, when we ask for help, we turn to, we look up and we say, please God, and we want it like that, and if it doesn't come like that, we sort of feel our prayers are being ignored, or the universe it's against me, the world is against me. We don't look at the big picture. And I didn't have enough time when I was writing Finding Chica in the immediate aftermath of her dying to really look at that large picture. But 4 years later, I was able to say, well, wait a minute. Janine and I, we didn't have kids of our own. It was something that we wanted. We got a chance in our mid-50s, late 50s, to have a beautiful child, sleep in our bedroom at the foot of our bed, go through all the stuff about waking us up and I'm hungry and a breakfast and, and come play fluffy, cozy bed camp with me, Mr. Mitch, and all that kind of stuff. that other parents get a chance to do. And we got it 16, 18 years after we were married and when we thought it was going to happen. Maybe maybe that was the answer to that prayer. It just, maybe God works on his own timetable and it doesn't have to be like you're ordering a sandwich. So I created a scenario, the ultimate sort of we need help scenario, where there's this luxury yacht full of these rich people. It was kind of modeled on the what's that, where they all of the very influential people go to a city and they all gather around together. I don't know if they do one in Sun Valley and they do one in Davos, right? Yeah, in Davos, Switzerland. So I kind of had that idea, but put it on a boat. All these people who are going to change the world, and they're all on this boat, and then the boat explodes mysteriously, and everybody's killed except 10 people, and half of them are the staff, and half of them are the rich guests, and they're in a life raft, and they're out at sea for 3 days, and nobody's coming for them. And, despite their cries for help and everything, there's nothing there. And they're running out of food. They see a shark in the water. They're, praying. And all of a sudden, they see this body floating in the water. A man is by himself, no life jacket, no anything. And they pull him into the boat. And he's just this young guy, nondescript looking guy. And they start peppering him with questions. He doesn't say anything. And finally, one of the women in the boat says, "Well, thank the Lord we found you." And he says, "I am the Lord." And that becomes the premise of like, well, wait a minute. Okay, we've been calling out for help. Here comes this schlubby guy. And they pull him into the boat and he says, "I am the Lord. Are you going to believe it or not?" And they say to him, "Well, what are you doing here if you're the Lord?" He says, "Well, haven't you been calling me? You called me, so I came." And of course, they don't believe it. Like many of you, it sounds like you wouldn't either. And the book kind of follows, as things get more desperate and more dire and all the rest of it, whether you choose to believe that you are getting the help that you need or not. Mm-hmm. And there's one section from that, if you don't mind, I'll just read
absolutely.
it.
Go right ahead. Yeah.
This has become kind of, for whatever reason, the readers of this book have cited page 241. I get more emails about page 241, so I'll read from page 241 because it is kind of the essence of the book. Because the lead character, Benji, who's in the boat, he's depressed because his wife passed away, and he's never been the same after she died. And he's angry, as I was angry at Chica passing. And finally, towards the end of the story, he confronts this God character. And he asks the question, that all of us would ask if we got 5 minutes with God. Why did my loved one have to die? Why did you take my loved one from me? And this is what the answer was. When someone passes, Benjamin, people always ask, why did God take them? A better question might be, why did God give them to us? What did we do to deserve their love, their joy, the sweet moments we shared? Didn't you have such moments with your wife? Every day, I rasped. Well, those moments are a gift, but their end is not a punishment. I'm never cruel, Benjamin. I know you before you're born. I know you after you die. My plans for you are not defined by this world. Beginnings and endings are earthly ideas. I go on, and because I go on, you go on with me. I know the tears you shed, Benjamin. When people leave this earth, their loved ones always weep. God smiled, but I promise you, those who leave do not. And I wrote that basically because that's how I felt about Chica. That of course we're crying because she's gone, but she's not crying where she is. And, all those moments that we had with her, we don't lose them because she's gone. And she wasn't taken to punish us. As I wrote the last 2 sentences of Finding Chica, we didn't lose a child, we were given one. And if you look at it that way, your life becomes much more one of gratitude instead of anger. And our kids in Haiti have learned that lesson much earlier in life than I have, but I'm trying to learn that same thing.
Yeah. Your books are always have these themes of humanity, and I think I watched an interview where you talked about what inspires you. I know people ask you all the time, what inspires you? And it's really what you want to explore, right? The issues or emotions or what you're feeling from a particular issue or event. That's where that little seed of that inspiration for the story starts, right?
Yeah. I feel that if I can't write, if it's not going to mean something to me, and I'm not exploring some question that I really wanted to answer, then it's not going to mean anything to anybody else. I don't think I'm gifted enough to just create amazing stories off the top of my head that are so colorful and the characters are so fantastic that everybody's going to want to read them. I recognize that if I have a gift, it's that I feel things that other people feel, and I ask questions about things that other people ask questions about, and I try to write stories that kind of start with that sort of question and at least come up with some kind of answer at the end. And when people say to me, I read your book, and I find myself thinking about it after I read it. I keep thinking about it. And I say, well, that's what better compliment can a writer get than the people are still thinking about it afterwards.
Yeah. You write both fiction, nonfiction. We've got the playwright, the film, I mean, all the music. That's a lot of creative energy going on there. I mean, what's that process like for you? You know, does you sit down and go, okay, I'm just writing fiction and then nonfiction, they're very different, right?
Yeah. I always say that the difference between writing fiction and nonfiction is when you write nonfiction, which I did for the earliest part of my career, you're a reporter and a sports writer, you go, man, you know, this would be such a great story if he had like a younger brother, but he doesn't, you know, so I'm stuck with it, you know, and I can't. So, and then fiction, you go, man, this would be a great story if he had a younger brother. Oh, I can give him a younger brother.
One, yeah.
But then a voice goes, maybe it should be a sister. So that doubt of like your own creativity is the punishment you get for the joy of being able to work outside of the lines of, you know, what the lines that are drawn for nonfiction. So you pick your poison, you know, sometimes it's better to live within the lines, and I know how to, you know, move between the two. You know, I don't write nonfiction unless it's something that's really personal to me. And it's just, I've had 3 things that have happened to me, all with other people.
Right.
I don't think I'll ever write a book that just centers about me. I don't think I'm ever going to write my own story or whatever. I never think it's interesting enough. But I know that I've had, with Morrie, with the 2 clerics in Have a Little Faith, and with Chica, that I was blessed to encounter these incredible people, and there was a lesson to be learned from that encounter, and that's why I thought it was worth doing as nonfiction.
We have a similar experience. I didn't tell you about this beforehand, but you were just in Europe, and you were in France, and you had a bike accident, and you were treated by a veterinarian.
Yes.
I was in France in the late 70s, got sick, and was treated by a veterinarian.
Same one as me?
Not the same one.
She's very busy with human beings.
I was going to say, but I thought, how many other people have visited France and got treated by a veterinarian?
That's...
you actually goes, me.
Yeah. No, it was a holiday. This was a couple weeks ago, and apparently all the doctors were gone. And they said the emergency room would take 7 hours. And I said, come on. You know, I was all bleeding, and, you know, a teenage girl talking to her boyfriend drifted out into the lane when we were on the bike things and was right in front of me. And when I look back, and I should have just gone right into her, you know, but I didn't. And I veered to the right to be the proper, and I flew off my bike and broke my elbow and scratched myself all up and everything. So my knee was all cut up, and this poor veterinarian was a friend of a guy I was with. She came in on her off day, and she stitched me up, and then she said, I'm sorry, but the x-ray machine is only set up for dogs. So what kind of dog are you, you know? And I said, a big one. And so she put the setting on the big dog thing, and she x-rayed me under, I put my paw down, and yeah, but I'm okay, thanks.
Just have, I think, time maybe for 1 or 2 questions. Anybody have a question? Yeah, go ahead right here.
So I got turned on to you from your sports writing, I can still remember. I'm assuming you're still a lifelong Tigers fan. I'm a lifelong Cubs fan.
Sorry.
I know. So where does sport fit in for you today as opposed to when you initially
Yeah, where does sports fit in for you today?
Well, when I started, sports was everything. That's all I wanted to do, was be the best sports writer there was, and I was on television on ESPN every Sunday, and you know, I did sports talk radio and all that stuff. And I still write sports. I mean, I still am actually technically the lead sports columnist for the Detroit Free Press. I don't write that often much anymore, but they're very nice to me, and they say just stick around and just write when you feel like it. To me, I never felt that sports was lesser than. You know, I always felt that sports stories were just as real as news stories, business stories, or whatever. And in many ways, more so because they wrote about the basic stuff, winning, losing. You know, some of the most inspirational stories I've ever written have been sports stories. I remember a story about a guy at the Olympics in 1992 who I was there and I witnessed, and he pulled up lame in a race, just a heat. There was nobody even watching. The stadium was 3/4 empty, and he pulled up lame, pulled a hamstring in a heat, and he fell to the ground because he realized his Olympics were over. And this was long, as you can tell, before 2001, you know, before 9/11. A guy ran out of the stands onto the track and lifted him up and put him on his feet and walked him to the finish line. And it turned out it was his father, and his father had taught him how to run. And he taught him how to run when he was a baby by putting his feet on his feet. And he didn't want to see his son not cross the finish line, because if you don't cross the finish line at the Olympics, your time is not recorded. It's as if you didn't participate. So, of course, he wasn't going to win, but at least get a time. And as he came around the bend, of course, everyone else was long since finished. Everybody stands up and they start clapping for him, whatever, the people who were there. Now people will tell you that there were 10 million people in the stands, and there weren't. There were about, 5,000 people who witnessed this, and I was lucky enough to be one of them. I ran down and I met this guy, and he said he was his father. So I couldn't make up a story as good as that. So sports, I always took that kind of angle in sports, and I still do. I don't really write X's and O's. I'm not that interested in it. But sports has also now become such a bloated thing. It's not like it was when I started. The guys have so much money that when they're 19, they've already earned more money than I'll ever see in my lifetime. And they don't have to talk to the press because they have their own websites and social media sites and all that. So the relationship isn't the same. We used to travel on the same planes with these guys. We used to sit next to them and talk. Now they're in a different stratosphere. Everybody's got their own planes, so.
I know you have to run because...
No, I don't. I'm okay.
Oh, you're okay?
They made it seem, I can't sit and sign everything because we have this rehearsal. We have to get over there to do the thing. But if somebody needs something personalized on their book,
another
I
question?
can do
We'll
it.
take
But I
maybe
can take a few
another
more questions
question
if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
When will we see your next great work?
When
My
will
next great work or just my next work? Because that could be two different questions. My next work is next year, next fall. And the book is tentatively called The Little Liar. And it's based on actually a true event. It's a fiction story, but it's based on this account that I saw at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial about how the Nazis used Jewish people to stand on the tracks of the trains that were going to concentration camps and to tell other Jewish people, it's safe, you can trust it. They use them to lie. And I create a story about a little boy who they use, who as a consequence of that can no longer tell the truth ever again for the rest of his life. So it's a book about truth and lies in the world. And the Holocaust has always been, I have members of my family who, were affected by that and lost relatives and that. So I've always sort of had that in the back of my mind. So that'll be coming next fall.
I saw a hand go up over here somewhere. Did somebody raise a hand? Yeah, go ahead.
So did Mike Lupica laugh at you after you wrote Travel Tuesdays with Morrie? You were saying be soft.
Probably, yeah. I mean, Mike Lupica laughs at me a lot. But he didn't laugh after it went on in the New York Times list, I can tell you that. Something else. Anybody else? Anybody else? Have any other questions?
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When you're writing a fiction, how do you, this go from chapter to chapter, suddenly something changes out of nowhere, unexpectedly. How does that happen where suddenly this is happening, and you catch the reader off guard, and something else is happening? Seems like
Going chapter to chapter, unexpected things are happening.
What's going to happen?
Well, I think that's something that I try to do in all my novels is I try to put a lot of red herrings and a lot of misdirection and a lot of, the great Ridley Pearson sitting right over there, and he's a mastermind at that. If you've ever read any of his books, you never know who's going to kill who in his books. I don't kill as many people or blow up as many things, but I think that's a great style of writing, of being able to, misdirect and have you look over here when I'm really doing something over here. And I also jump time a lot in my books. I'll go from a section here, and then I'll go to an italic section. Like in The Five People You Meet in Heaven, I knew I wanted to tell Eddie's story, but I didn't want to tell it just like, okay, let's start here and let's go, because he was 83 years old. It would take forever. So what I did was I did these little italic sections called Today is Eddie's Birthday. And I did it his first birthday, when he was born, his 5th birthday, his 18th when he was going to the war, his 25th when he got married, all that. And so you take the story up to here, then you jump back in time, then you go here. It's kind of cinematic in some ways, and when they've made movies of my stuff, it's kind of done the same thing. But that's just the way I think. Crooked.
Last question right here. Go ahead.
I'm a ferocious reader, and I never read a book twice. I've read all my books at least twice, 3 or 4 times.
Thank you.
And I learn something every time I read it again. My question to you is this: do you have any favorites?
Of my books?
Do you have a favorite?
Of my books? I believe that Finding Chica is the best book I've ever written, and I hope that I hope it remains that way. I know that's a little sacrilegious to Tuesdays with Morrie fans, but, I think I wanted the world to know Chica because I know they're never going to get a chance. And so I felt that I had to throw everything I had in that book. I got physically sick towards the end of that book, nervous sick, and things that had never gone wrong with me had gone wrong with me. And I didn't know what was going on, and I was going to these doctors, and finally a very smart neurologist said, "What are you doing?" And I told her, and she said, "You realize you're reliving all this stuff, and you're writing it. Of course you're going to, this is all nerves, this is all anxiety, this is all," and I think it's the best writing that I've done. Tuesdays with Morrie is always going to be, as you pointed out, Mindy, it changed my whole trajectory. It's changed other people's trajectories. I meet people who say, I reunited with my brother or mother or family or whatever, or I read that book out loud to my mother, she was dying from cancer together. And I don't look at that as me. I really look at that as Morrie. And I think that's why, favorite, I don't feel like I wrote that book all by myself. I think I wrote it with Morrie on my shoulder, And The Five People You Meet in Heaven will always be significant to me because everybody told me not to write Tuesdays with Morrie. Nobody's going to read it. It's boring. And then after Tuesdays with Morrie came out, and it somehow became this success, then all anybody wanted from me was Wednesdays with Morrie, and Thursdays with Morrie, and Chicken Soup with Morrie, and Venus and Mars and Morrie, and everything. And it would have been very tempting to just do something like that, but I swore I would never do that, and there will never be any sequels or anything like that, because what happened, and that was it. And I'm not going to soil it. I'm not going to turn it into a cottage industry. It was a beautiful thing, and if the fact that a lot of people read it, well, that's great, but it would have been a beautiful thing if 6 people read it, which is what I figured would happen when I wrote it. So I decided, they said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, anything I pick nonfiction, everyone's going to say, well, it's not Morrie. And I said, that's not going to be very good to whatever subject I pick. And so I said, I guess I'll try fiction. And everyone said, oh, no, don't do that. That's the dumbest thing you could do. That's the stupidest thing you could do. And I said, well, that's what you said about Tuesdays with Morrie. So I'm going to do it anyhow. And I wrote The Five People You Meet in Heaven, and Knockwood was a big, big success. And so that's always going to be personal to me. That's like a first child. But that's how I feel about those 3.
Mitch, it was really great talking. And I want to thank Janine and Mitch for the work that you do.
This is my beautiful wife,
in
Janine,
Haiti
who
and
helps us run the orphanage.
Other organizations. It takes special people to do that kind of work. So thank you for that, and thank you for all that you write, and thanks for being here at the Book Festival.
You're welcome. We'll see you all tonight, and if somebody needs something personalized, I'll try to do it before I leave here outside or something like that, okay? Thank you all.